Well, hello, everybody. Van Potts with Preston Layne and Partners, and welcome to another episode of Preston Layne and Partners Wine and Lifestyle Channel. We're going to talk today a little bit about pairing food and wine together. And I'm going to tell you some of the general things that I believe are to be true. And I'm going to give everybody a lot of hope for a great opportunity because it's not that difficult. And then I'm going to give you a couple of things that I think are things that you probably want to always keep in mind. And then I'm going to give you my two rules for me personally. Doesn't mean they're everybody's rules, but they're my two rules. So right back in a second. Okay, so let's talk about pairing food and wine, because it's probably one of the most discussed topics there is in all of the culinary world. What food and wine should have together. There are entire careers built around people matching food and wine together. So it's not just me that thinks that. It's something that's really, really big and all over the world. So here's the first rule. There are no rules. That's really the truth. So whenever I hear somebody say, well, we're all getting a steak, what kind of red wine should we get? Or we're all getting fish, should we have, what kind of white wine or what kind of Chardonnay should we have? Something like that. The first thing I always think is like, well, why do I have to have red wine with my steak, and why do I have to have Chardonnay with my fish? As a matter of fact, I'm not sure I would have Chardonnay with fish unless it was salmon or some kind of really oily fish. But the fact is that there really are no rules. You can have red wine with fish just as easily as you can have a bottle of Chardonnay with a steak. You can do it. It's not difficult. Chicken, you can have, it's open even more. So I think that the old days of red wine with red meat, white wine with light meat or fish, throw those out the door and out the window. They don't make a whole lot of sense, and you shouldn't live like that. I've definitely had my fair share of bone-in ribeyes with a bottle of Chardonnay and enjoyed them very, very much. And conversely, I've had I'll never forget when Michael Keenan, who owns Keenan Winery, one time, I was having codfish for New Year's Eve, and he said, you should have my Merlot. And I was like, Merlot with codfish? I had it. It was absolutely delicious. And he was exactly right to make that recommendation. So those are the first rules. There aren't any rules. You can kind of do what you want to do. And of course, with pink wine, that's a lot of things are open up with rosés as well. Now, there is one wine that I think that goes with everything. And I do mean everything, and that is sparkling wine. I don't know of any food that really just flat doesn't work with sparkling wine. So never be afraid to have sparkling wine with anything. One of the great things I know a lot in our household, I pick what I'm going to eat based on what I want to drink. And sparkling wine is one of those things you can say, well, I'm going to have sparkling wine. Well, then you can make almost anything. But it gets to be a little bit different if you're going to, say I'm going to have a bottle of Pinot Blanc, and then you have, maybe you got some choices to make in the kitchen. But with sparkling wine, no choices, goes with everything. Okay, so now what are a couple of different things that I think are pretty consistent, right? So number one, I think if you're going to have spicy food, like really, really spicy, either, habanero peppers or ghost pepper, something that's got a lot of hotness going on, Thai hot dish or Himalayan hot Indian dish. I think it's always good to have a little bit of residual sugar in the wine, just a little hint of sweetness, because it really helps balance out some of those intense heat flavors. So, I think that's one of the things that I would say is kind of you probably always want to do that. The other thing I think that's really, really important is when you have a really nice salad. I think that as opposed to having a big, heavy wine that just knocks it over like Cabernet Sauvignon or Syrah, I think it's always nicer to have a little bit of a lighter wine, either a Sauvignon Blanc or a Pinot Blanc or a Pinot Noir. Something, and Pinot Noirs can be big. Don't get me wrong, but something that doesn't quite knock you over with tannins and tons and tons of wood structure, so to speak. So those are kind of my two generalities. And I definitely eat a lot of salad, so I'm pretty well versed in it. Okay, now, what are my two rules? My personal two rules. They're pretty simple, actually. Number one, if you're having lamb, that's a red wine dish. I don't care what anybody says. I have yet to have lamb with any white wine and enjoy it. Now, that doesn't mean that there's not some Greek person out there that can correct me. And please put it in the comments below. If I'm wrong, I want to hear all about it. That might say, if you have a Sertico a certain way, it goes really, really well with lamb. But as a general rule, I think lamb is actually one food that really does require red wine. And if I were out and somebody ordered it, I would absolutely have red wine. The second thing I would tell you is that when it comes to cumin, I don't think you should ever have red wine. And so a lot of times when I'm having an Indian meal, I don't want to have red wine. I want to have white wine. It doesn't mean that red wine doesn't go with Indian food, but there's a lot of cumin in a lot of Indian food. So for me personally, if I'm having something that has a fair amount of cumin in it, I'm going to have a white wine or a pink wine as opposed to a red wine. So those are kind of my two things. They're just me. They're again, the first rule is there are no rules. So it really comes down to what you think and what you like. I hope this helps you out a little bit today, and I hope that you find some pairings that you really thought you might like, that now you're like, okay, now I'm okay with liking them. If you have any comments, we'd like to hear from you down below, and ask us any questions. We'd like to answer them. And if you have anything that you're like, you know what, Van, that's not true. We do it this way all the time, and here's what we do. I'd love to hear that too. So always want to hear that. Thanks for hitting the like button, and thanks for subscribing, and we'll talk to you the next time.